How do you start this one? I don't know. The unifying theory of everything is. I take a lot of gasps here. Grasps, not grasps. Gaps. There you go. That's that. That's the G word I was looking for. Okay, so the unified theory of everything. Sounds crazy. When you truly dive into philosophy and you have a natural apt for it, it's something that is everything and nothing. And that is how I've always, well, not always, but when I finally reached what I considered a true grasp of philosophy, it was a paradox. And that paradox is everything and nothing. You know, you have religion, you have science. They are paradoxes of one another. One you can purely believe in, and reality can manifest itself based on those beliefs. And science is fact-based, and you don't get to believe. You get to pursue rights and wrongs, but your tests are always, paradoxical. Everything's always paradoxical. So there are paradoxes within paradoxes, and that tests that we believe are exact are always rounded. All the numbers we use are rounded. Every test we conduct, it's cause and effect. Sure, what works, but how long does it work? Is that really working? If something prolongs your life 10 years versus your plausibility, your life expectancy of 90 years, and you're 40, and did it really work? You're just saying it does. It's cause and effect. You accept that outcome. And with religion and science, the paradoxes and how they compound are rather hypocritical, silly, and just a way to waste a lot of time. And honestly, what the hell else would we have to do, right? So, when it comes to the unifying theory of everything and nothing, well, I think a lot of people have pursued it, but maybe they don't pursue the philosophy that all knowledge is founded in philosophy, all pursuit of knowledge anyway. I'm sorry. And well, let me tell you one thing. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. This is all things that I think about, and so honestly, when you do talk to people about it, it's just like, let's just do something fun, Let's go out and have some fun. So when you have the brain that I do, well, it's very difficult to say the least. You struggle to even tolerate yourself. And if we were to erase all writings, all philosophies, it's that there are two things I want to express right now. And I probably will read this to you, because this was working on a constitutional foundation to govern philosophically all life, all cognitive life in the universe. It is not my obligation. I am not that good. I'm whatever the fuck I am. But there are two things that I want to address. Is that definition of philosophy and how that relates to the definition of God or gods, deities, any of the analogies. And or synonyms. Analogies, synonyms. And 2, I forgot. So, my main point with this video is that the definition of God changes constantly. Every time we try to define a deity, and trust, I know if you're scientifically minded, you're like, why is he talking? Well, philosophers, you think about fucking everything, especially what's important to people. And religion is very important to humanity. To me, it's a stepping stone of morality. It has unified people. It's had a lot of issues, though. Tons of issues. Are we ready to be self-aware? Are we ready to not follow this guidance of morality? Do we just have it naturally? Who knows? We can't take that chance because we can collapse again. There could be another dark age. We still need religion. I get that. But the definition of God is always changing. It's never defined. Every time you define God, you know what you're pursuing. You know what you're trying to explain. And we end up becoming that power. And that's why in the early 1900s, people were saying that you were meddling with God's platform. You were challenging God and all this other stuff. And with a lot of philosophy, you have to explain the most obvious things that other people cannot put into words. Though they understand it and grasp it, philosophy is quite literal in that way, and it's a beautiful thing. It's you get to be very annoying, though. And so the only, and I'm gonna be crucified for this, I know. This is why I believe I've been hunted all these years, is that every time you challenge religion, we have had in history just murder after fucking murder and killing after blood and blood. It is just horrid. And philosophers are hunted. I mean, it is legit. We've always been hunted. Now, I might be a self-proclaimed naturally born philosopher, which is exceptionally rare. Everybody says that they are philosophers, but what makes a philosopher? Well, it's this right here. Is that when you define God, you can correlate that to the exact definition of philosophy. And that's one thing that I've wondered for a long time. Maybe that term, God, was used as philosophy in our past. That every time you try to define philosophy, it becomes something that it isn't. You defined subsections of philosophy just like you define subsections of religions and gods and deities, and you format a whole new vacancy for philosophy, for people to think differently. And with religion, you create the opportunity for people to act and react differently. So maybe it's physical versus imaginative, even though those two seem to contradict one another, because philosophy leads into science as a modern tool, and religion always leads into a physical react. It's how we apply philosophy to humanity. And it's just, it's a paradox within a paradox, and a paradox is cubed. They get really hard to track. And I've kept track of a lot of them, very important ones. And like I said, many roads lead to the same conclusions. So the unifying theory of everything is based in philosophy. Because without philosophy, humans would not be human. Whether or not that word changes in 1,000 years, 10,000 years, if we have another dark age, if we lose language, like we lost hieroglyphs, like we lost the methods for building the pyramids throughout the world, our history in general, the term will always find a format for consideration, for challenging, for getting self-indulgence without, cause and effect, to deny reality its simplest path, to be an animal that isn't simply impulse, that people can be people, and other species too can also evolve, most certainly if we can, to be cognitive. And so I'm going to read this. We can ignore the upper part. When you hold it all in your head, it's easy to understand, but philosophy is hard to explain. And that's what sets philosophers apart. So it's to all that shall grasp, devoted to understanding, privileged by knowledge, humbled by wisdom, spark within the soul passion, integrity, humility. All may think, consider, resolve, man to be but a term, therefore I am. This cognitive dissonance, defending the individual, the self, the worth, equal to potential hereby forth, within all that doubt are created, are governed equally, uniquely. I haven't read this in a while. All that doubt are governed uniquely, and awareness from all to all, for all, encompassing nature, bonded by will, everything and nothing, philosophium, of which is pure and true. The degree of, when altered, becomes corruption. The self that will emits, will, the personal will, I could have wrote that, emits, neither given nor taken, shall always be preserved. There without allows collapse. Collectively beside, governed by paradox, stable within, to be what is decided, chosen, willed forth, the resolve of each devoted to potential, plagued by righteousness, honored by experience, are vowed ideals undefined for preservation, the extent to which relinquishes not but limitation, limits refined to equity, dissolve reclamation, to inspire commonly among the diverse, infinite sets of potential, sets of unifying dissonance. Behind every choice becomes a paradox, generalizing peace in all sorts of nothingness. Choices of man becoming all corruptions of peace, when choices impart upon another's resolve of a paradox. The will of man, then free, when neither given nor taken, shall always be preserved. For consciousness requires self-awareness. One may never assume they have the ability to preserve another's free will. The value of understanding, knowledge, and wisdom, three states of cognition, when unified, become sage. When mankind has defined all, there will either be a devotion to pursuit of our lost imagination, or the devotion to our sustained imagination and desire of artistry. Choices are a requirement. It is not easy to write in paradoxes. It's confounding. It makes people think you're insane, which is fine. Never feared that. But the ending, as you can tell, the repetition, it repeats, and that's paradoxes. So with a paradox, you can have a core and two outlets create an idea or a subject, of which three format a concept. And or a state. And well, we wouldn't have states. So if you relate this to physics, we wouldn't have states if it wasn't for solids, liquids, and gases. There would only be one dimension or two dimension. Point to point, position to position. Existence is the first dimension, as you would imagine, and through three you can create a correlation, difference, and consideration of diversity to analyze and compound ideas. After that, paradoxes start to cycle. So the most viable paradox is one with an infinite set of points. There you go. An infinite set of points. And in this giant circle is an infinite set of probability. And if man can create art as a life form, or life as an art form, then we have infinite potential.